Coming now to YouTube. Hello everybody. Welcome to the Reluctant Disney Adult, where we talk about almost all things Disney. I'm your host, Amy. Today we're going to rank all 62 of the feature-length Walt Disney Animation Studios films. Yes, even the hard-to-get Make Mine Music and the recently released Wish. Now we've got a bunch of films to get through and only so much of my voice, so let's get started. Number 62, Chicken Little. Walt Disney Animation Studios tries to be DreamWorks. It doesn't work. Number 61, Home on the Range. Walt Disney Animation Studios tries to do the Looney Tunes. That doesn't work either. Number 60, Dinosaur. It wasn't so bad until the dinosaurs started talking. Number 59, The Aristocats. Yeah, the kittens are pretty cute, but there's not really much else going on. Number 58, Tarusan. Yeah, the Phil Collins song isn't too bad, and the animation is kind of nice, but otherwise it's not a great movie. Number 57, Fun and Fancy Free. It's two shorts that are way too long, and they just don't work very well. Number 56, The Three Caballeros. One of those Good Neighbor propaganda films. This one is the one where Donald gets a little horny. Let's move on. Number 55, Salsas Amigos. The first of the Good Neighbor propaganda films that Walt Disney Animation Studios did. It's fine, I guess. Number 54, The Fox and the Hound. It's a tired, kind of so-so film that would make an honestly excellent making of oral history. Number 53, The Rescuers Down Under. The animation is good at times, and the villain is truly scary, but otherwise, there's not a whole lot there. Number 52, Ralph Breaks the Internet. It had its moments, but it really felt a little outdated and just didn't work all that well. Number 51, Wish. The latest film is kind of a mess with unmemorable songs and just a bunch of stuff that doesn't work very well. Number 50, The Black Cauldron. I bet you forgot this movie existed, didn't you? And there's a reason for it, because it's pretty forgettable. Number 49, The Sword in the Stone. It's fine. It's got its moments. It's not too bad, but it's not that great. Number 48, Oliver and Company. This was what Disney was trying to hit on, a, movie with the music done by Billy Joel before, the Little Mermaid came along and created the Disney Renaissance way of doing things. It's okay. Number 47, Pocahontas. Colors of the Wind, yes, it's a great song, but it's really kind of squicky that Disney made a film loosely based on actual historical events back in 1607. Number 46, Zootopia. It's kind of a muddled mess in what it's trying to say, and therefore it doesn't really work super well. I'm I am going to give it the benefit of the doubt and not punish it by ranking it any lower because of that one comic based on it. You know the one. Number 45, Hercules. From 0 to mid in about 45 flat, this movie is where it should be. Number 44, Melody Time. Another one of those package films from the 1940s. This one, the shorts actually work pretty well for me. Number 43, Atlantis, the Lost Empire. This started really promising, but then it just kind of sputters and doesn't work so well towards the end. Number 42, Treasure Planet. By contrast, this has a strong start and a pretty strong end, but the middle just does not work and it falls apart. And that's why this film, as beautiful as it is ranked number 42. Number 41, Strange World. Another film that I wish I could like more, but it just doesn't work for multiple reasons that I went through in a different video before it got taken over by our creative consultant, Anya. Number 40, Bull. Disney is starting to get the hang of it with the CG animation and makes this perfectly fine film back in 2008. Number 39, Raya and the Last Dragon. If you've probably noticed, there are a bunch of the non-musical kind of adventure type films in this part of the rankings. I mean, part of it is personal preference, but also it's just Disney has had that problem for decades. They don't really know exactly how to put those kind of films together. And this one is no different. Number 38, Peter Pan. Now this one might be a surprise considering, it's Peter Pan and therefore it's classic Disney. But I just don't really like the film all that much. I mean, I guess You Can Fly is good, but the rest of the film just doesn't work for me. Number 37, Dumbo. Yeah, I guess we have entered the heart of hot take district here in the rankings. But again, Dumbo doesn't really work that well for me. Outside of Baby Mine, of course, is a gut-wrenching song and animation along with it. And then, of course, the Pink Elephant Parade is kind of terrifying and interesting. But the film kind of feels just kind of cheap compared to the other ones around it because it was kind of made on the cheap because of Disney's budget problems in the early 1940s. Number 36, Make Mine Music. The only of the 62 Walt Disney Animated Studio films that isn't on Disney Plus, except for Wish at the moment. It's a shame because this is honestly the best of those package films, except for one exception coming up later. I was charmed by it. The shorts most of them are honestly pretty great. Number 35, The Jungle Book. The first of these films to be released after the death of Walt Disney. This is a perfectly fine film with some excellent songs. Number 34, Robin Hood. The spiritual predecessor to Zootopia, this film is actually pretty good, which honestly is kind of a surprise considering it was made for about 50 cents back in 1973. The animation reuse and repetition is almost on a Hanna-Barbera scale, but the film just works. There's a vibe to it, and the music, it just feels unique compared to the rest of the Walt Disney films, and that counts for something. Number 33, The Rescuers. Bob Newhart and Eva Gabor are rather charming in this film, which frankly feels about a decade out of date from when it was released in 1977, which is pretty much par for the course of 1970s Disney. Number 32, Meet the Robinsons. Sure, the rah-rah technology spirit that is in the film hasn't really aged super well, but it's weird at times in a very good way. It's got some funny parts, and it's got a good heart to it. Number 31, Fantasia 2000. The second of the Fantasia films, it's got a big shoes to fill, and it doesn't really succeed as well as we'd like. But there are some really excellent segments, and I mean, it's pretty pictures with good music over top of it. It's going to be enjoyable, even if it's not necessarily the most memorable. Number 30, Winnie the Pooh. This film, I think, is actually a little underrated and overlooked. It's funny, it's charming, and the songs actually kind of are catchy. It's too bad that it has the ignominious honor of being the last to date 2D traditional animated film made by Walt Disney Animation Studios. Number 29, Big Hero 6. Honestly, for as much as I've talked about how the adventure films of Disney just don't work very well, this one actually does work pretty well, although it's more of a superhero film, I guess. I honestly enjoy the story and the characters. And of course, Baymax is pretty awesome. Number 28, Brother Bear. In between the early 2000s adventure films that don't work very well and the mid-2000s family comedies that really didn't work, is this sweet, pretty good film that they released back in 2003. Number 27, The Emperor's New Groove. Yeah, it's amazing that they turned it into a film that was as funny and entertaining as it was, considering the just disaster of a production that the film was up to the final production of it. Number 26, The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. This actually is another package film like all those films in the 40s because it was putting together a bunch of pre-existing Winnie the Pooh shorts. But, I mean, those are classic Winnie the Pooh shorts, and the framing device and everything that brings them together works pretty well too. Number 25, Frozen 2. The film is honestly a complete mess, and the interesting ideas at the end get completely undercut by the resolution, but I can't be that mad at Elsa and Anna. And besides, I do still enjoy the music a lot. Number 24, Sleeping Beauty. The last of the classic Disney films before the 1960s. This has an interesting style to it that really isn't replicated anywhere else. And, you know, it's got a whole lot of elements that work really well, even though it also at times kind of feels a little slight. But all in all, it's a pretty great film. Number 23, Alice in Wonderland. This one has kind of bounced around in my rankings depending on what year it was and after what rewatch it came in. But I think I'm pretty confident in this one being towards the higher end here. It's just a weird explosion of weirdness that I think works pretty well. Number 22, Aladdin. There have also been times when I've been pretty lukewarm on this film. And there are some elements that I think haven't aged very well. But the fundamentals of the film are still fairly strong. The genie is an all-time character. And, of course, A Whole New World. Amongst the other songs, but especially A Whole New World. Number 21, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. The best ranked of all of the Disney package films. This one is just a treat. The Mr. Toad, The Wind in the Willows short is a lot of goofy, silly, chaotic fun. And it inspired the great Disney park attraction, including the one that is the dearly departed one out in Disney World. As for the Ichabod story, the Legend of Sleepy Hollow, it's kind of goofy and silly, and that kind of can be a bit annoying, but it also is genuinely scary, which is not something you see in most Disney films. Number 20, 101 Dalmatians. By the early 60s, the Walt Disney Animation Studios were looking to save money, and this can be seen in the animation style, which looks a little cheaper than the films of the 50s because of the techniques they used. Nevertheless, it works really well for what they were trying to go for with 101 Dalmatians and the period of time that the movie came out. Just between, the legendary Cruella de Vil and, the fact that they were somehow able to animate 101 dogs and it worked as well as it did. Number 19, Mulan. One of the better latter half of Disney Renaissance films. This one really speaks to trans people. Not just trans masked people, but also trans femme people like myself. Number 18, The Princess and the Frog. Although not the last traditionally animated film by Walt Disney Animation Studios, that was, of course, the previously mentioned Winnie the Pooh. This is an excellently animated film. It feels like Disney had really returned to something pretty great after kind of wandering through the wilderness. The film is honestly a little long, but it's still quite magical. Number 17, Frozen. I'm not going to lie, I saw this film more times than I probably should admit publicly back in 2013 and 2014, but I was kind of going through some things and it kind of makes sense. It's less of a mess of a film than its sequel, even though it kind of is not as good in the second half, in part because there's virtually no songs in the second half. But yeah, of course, Let It Go. Number 16, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. It's the first one. It's the important one that started them all. And it's a pretty great film. It's solidly plotted and the characters are pretty thin, but they're enjoyable. And I mean, it was in a lot of ways a proof of concept, and it's a very good proof of concept. Number 15, Lady and the Tramp. This film is pretty great, even if, there's that one song that hasn't aged very well. But yeah, like the way that it's shot from at the level of a dog is kind of inventive and neat, and it has a very warm look to it that is very charming. And of course, the two dogs with the spaghetti and the meatball. Number 14, Cinderella. I do have to admit that Cinderella is probably higher just because it was one of the first films by Disney that I remember watching. But so it has kind of that attachment that bumps it up a bit. But it's a really solid film that felt like a breath of fresh air after those 40s package films. To just be back to, the music and the animation and the characters that is classic Disney animation. Number 13, Tangled. I'm honestly as surprised as you are that this is the highest of those the newer princess films, I guess. With, I guess, maybe, one big exception remaining. But it still was the only one of these films to have a song played at my wedding back in September. Number 12, The Great Mouse Detective. This film probably saved Walt Disney Animation back in the 80s by being, kind of a hit. And there's good reason for it. It is a damn good time at the movies. You have a very good adaptation of Sherlock Holmes and a incredibly charismatic and fun to watch villain played by a very game Vincent Price. Number 11, Bambi. I mean, it's Bambi. It's, all the beautiful animation and the animals painstakingly researched by the animators. The music, just, the terrifying nature of man and the changing of the seasons and growing up. It's just so well done. And it's a great film. I know that's very repetitive, but these are all great films. Number 10, Encanto. I was a little late after everyone seemed to have watched it and understood all the references and all of that. But I was really charmed by this film. The characters are excellent, and of course the whole story and dealing with intergenerational trauma and all of that, I think works very well. Of course, the songs are catchy and a whole lot of fun. And honestly, I think the animation is really well done as well. So, number 9, The Hunchback of Notre Dame. This one sometimes I think gets a little lost, and people kind of maybe bunch it in with the back half of the Disney Renaissance films that don't work very well. But that's really unfair to this film. It is a very touching, a very well done film with some truly excellent musical pieces, and the animation that goes along with that music is just so well done, and it's just a gorgeous and well done film that definitely deserves to be in my top 10. Number 8, Fantasia. I mean, you can't touch the original Fantasia. Fantasia 2000 is fine, but Fantasia is just excellent. Obviously, there were some parts that were not good in terms of, typical 1940s racism that have pretty much been excised from any version you're going to get on Disney Plus or anywhere else. But that's just the one piece compared to all the others. And of course, The Sorcerer's Apprentice is part of this. And, Chernobog, The Night on Bald Mountain. It's just, it's music and thematically appropriate animation. It just works so well. Number 7, Moana. This, of course, was the one princess film of the, 21st century princess films, such as you were, that I was mentioning back when I was talking about Tangled. I just love this film. It just works so well. I'm so glad how the resolution works out. And I just enjoy the music so much. Especially How Far I'll Go, which honestly is up there as much for me as Let It Go. Number 6, WreckIt Ralph. This kind of feels like a little bit of a surprise, you'd think, given how low its sequel is. But this is just a very well structured, very well put together film that is really great. You have stories for 4 characters that progress and work so well. And it's just a great film. And even figures out a way to incorporate all of the, video game characters, licensed characters that feels real to the universe of the film and not just a shallow brand dump experience. Number 5, Lilo and Stitch. Well, we've made it. It's the top 5. And coming up here at number 5, of course, is Lilo and Stitch. It's just the way this film works, where even those who are after Stitch, there's logic to it, and how they all come to an agreement towards the end. On top of that is just this whole family dynamic and, the thematic way that Lilo and Stitch just see each other in themselves, and how that all comes together, and how Lilo and her sister are dealing with it all just works so well. And what can I say? It's just, it gets to me. Number 4, The Lion King. It's The Lion King. You've got, the music, you got Hakuna Matata, you've got Can You Feel the Love Tonight, and just the opening, which almost 30 years later still gives me goosebumps, even just thinking about it, let alone watching it. And just how it's so colorful and just so well done. And just, Rafiki just when he realizing Simba is alive, that gets to me too. Number 3, The Little Mermaid. It's not as polished as some of the classics that came after it. It kind of feels more apart with Oliver and Company and The Great Mouse Detective and some of those films from about the decade before it, as much as it feels with, Beauty and the Beast and The Lion King and Aladdin. But of course, it started it all. It really started it all there back in 1989. And A Part of Your World just hits just as much as any other of those songs that hit so much for me. Number 2, Beauty and the Beast. Every time I think of Beauty and the Beast, of course my mind goes to the big scene in the ballroom with the animation and, of course, Belle in that wonderful yellow dress, that gold dress, and, Angela Lansbury singing Beauty and the Beast. And, of course, that is so perfect of a scene. But there are so many other scenes that feel so perfect in that film. And it really is Disney's animation firing on all cylinders, just coming together to make a simply wonderful film. And it's so hard. As many great films as Disney has made, they only get a few of those. They've only had a few of those since 1937. And it's just magic to see it happen. Number 1, Pinocchio. And as great as Beauty and the Beast is, I think Pinocchio is even better. That might be a controversial pick, but no, Pinocchio is, in my opinion, the best piece of animation that Walt Disney Animation Studios has ever done. It's particularly the best feature film. It's a moving story. It's funny. It's got excellent music. The animation is just so top-notch. It does things that, frankly, after Pinocchio, Disney wouldn't do until they had, the computer-aided tools for, like, Beauty and the Beast and The Little Mermaid. And they did this back in the late 30s. And, of course, it's terrifying at times, too. Like, the island and the donkeys and all of that. And Monstro, and it's just this perfectly wonderful, well-done film that deserves its place at the top of this list. And there we have it. As always, if you agree or disagree, please let us know in the comments. And if you like this video, we'd appreciate it if you gave us a like and a subscribe. Every little bit helps. See you next time on The Reluctant Disney Adult.